What's up, guys? So I'm doing a review of Wastelands 2. So I got curious about this game because I saw it and it didn't look like my initial, type of game that I would actually reach out to, being more of a turn-based RPG. So I thought it'd be an interesting challenge to be able to investigate this. Moreover, I usually don't like, post apocalypse, type themes. Mad Max themes and any sort of dark artwork and graphics, which in my opinion is more commonplace these days. I'm more of a classical medieval RPG fantasy fan, like the Ultimas series and Oblivion and things like that. Like even Skyrim itself I think was a great game, but I actually didn't like Skyrim because it was just it felt a little too dark. But however, I did like Fallout 3, even though it wasn't all those things, in terms of being post-apocalyptic and being dark, but and some of the same team that created Fallout was from the original Wasteland, so it got me curious. So you know what? Let me check this out. And the synopsis is that I liked the game enough and made enough of an impression for me to do a review. So overall, I can say I really enjoyed my experience with Wastelands 2. So if you haven't heard of Wastelands 1, it's a pretty old game. It came out about 1988. I hadn't actually played it, but it was an RPG style game, and it was known for being unforgivingly hard. It had a couple other aspects to it that were new. Was that the world was pretty dynamic, that you do certain actions and it would remember them, which obviously doesn't seem like such a big deal these days, but back then hard drives were not commonplace. You had to save the game on a disc, so there's definitely a pattern with the choices that you made. Overall, it had a pretty good reception. Even though I was playing games during that time, I didn't come across it. So now Wastelands 2, really, like I said, it just been a really good experience. I'll talk about some of the things that I liked about it. In terms of the likes, so for someone who's not really into sort of tactical turn-based RPGs, I actually found this really engaging. I found it really interesting, and it got me thinking. A lot of times it was like playing a game of chess, where you do certain moves, and I think about it. If I move the person this way, what would happen? And there was a certain satisfaction with just with winning, which even more so than playing an action-based game, where in action-based games a lot of it these days can be button mashing, where there's just a sense of satisfaction with thinking about the right moves and doing the right things. So I found the combat actually really fun and engaging for something that really is not necessarily time sensitive. Like there's just a sense of exhilaration from winning a battle, and a sense of enticing challenge that even when I lose, to want to be able to try it in a different way and to try it in different combinations. So not my particular style, but I really enjoyed the combat, and there's lots of it. And sometimes the combat reminds me of like a JRPG, where you'll be traveling along the map, and on that basis there you'll zoom into a character and you'll come into a zone and you'll sort of strategize there. But yeah, lots of combat there. A lot of details in the combat. You got to make sure you're not getting friendly fire there. Not using the right weapons and things like that. And again, I come from a bit of a bias because maybe this is commonplace with strategy turn-based style RPGs, which I don't play a whole lot of these days. But I found it from quite challenging in the right sort of way. So I think that's a pretty good sign of the game and what the level of interest that it can hold for somebody. In terms of production values, really good. I think everything was really well put together. Everything was tight, graphics, sound, everything was overall good. And it's got a bit of that new school flavor without and a bit of old school flavor. Like it definitely has some old elements of a game where which is challenging and makes you think, but it still has the nice new packaging. Everything's nice and shiny with the graphics and things like that. So what didn't I like about this game? So sometimes the UI could be a little bit confusing. I found the fonts ridiculously small, even when I propped them up, which that's a big pain point for me because I do play on my PC and I like to blow it up onto my TV screen. And when the font's too small, I can't play it. But even when I was just playing this on my TV, my regular monitor, I actually found it really hard to read. Sometimes I had to get up close to the monitor and squint. And some elements of the UI cannot be sometimes not necessarily intuitive. So even going through the character creation process, sort of dabbling around, figuring out which parts to click. And again, this could be a bias for someone who doesn't play these type of games that often, and can be a bit of a bit slower in that regard. But I think being a little bit cleaner in that respect that make it better. Having said that, it's just, again, a question of the right target audience, right? I mean, the type of person I think who would play this game is someone who wants to get invested into this. It's not meant for the casual player, really. You need to be able to invest your time into playing this game. Character customizations could have been a little bit more, and it is kind of cool creating some pretty distinct looking characters, but there's some things I would wanted to modify more. Not a huge deal, but yeah, overall there wasn't really too many things I didn't like about it. I mean, the things that I'd say that I didn't like about it, like I said, the UI not being intuitive, it could be difficult and it could be challenging. I don't know if it would be ridiculously hard, like I played it on the season level, and I'm not typically good at these type of games. But I didn't find it ridiculously hard. It was definitely challenging. You make the wrong move and it could be unforgiving. I get the wrong guy killed and whatnot, and have to live with that. But I think it's just a question of the right target market. If you have someone who likes sort of strategizing and thinking, this is the type of game for you. If something wrong with the game itself, it just might not be the type of game that you're looking for if the elements that you don't like about it. So like I said, the UI and stuff like that maybe not being intuitive, well, that's because you do there's a lot more complexity with some of the elements of the game, and a person has to be a little bit more invested than picking up a shooter game, for instance, right? So overall, there wasn't too much I didn't really like about it. It would just be a question of, is this the right type of game for you if you don't like it. Graphics wise, the graphics style and artwork style really reminds me of some of the older Fallout games, like Fallout 1 and 2. You got sort of this top angle and a sort of Diablo style sort of angle. It would be kind of nicer if we could zoom in a little bit more. Again, I think that's not a commonality with this genre game, but I'm just zooming in, looking at my characters and stuff like that a little bit more. But graphics are pretty well done. Not mind blowing, but everything was well put together. Everything was clean. Everything looked pretty good in the way that it was structured. So yeah, it's I gave it a pretty good rating for the graphics. Nothing revolutionary, but it's not meant to be. It definitely looked like a good production. Music wise, pretty good. I wouldn't say it's a strong point, but it's not really. Actually putting too much music would kill from the ambience because it's a post-apocalyptic area, so you don't want dominating music, which really takes over your attention because it would take away from that sense of barrenness with the environment. So I didn't really notice the music most of the time. I was just sort of engaged in the game itself. But when I did notice, it was pretty well together. Some spots are in terms of music and audio in general. Some spots are voice enacted. Some spots are not. Would be a nicer touch if everything was sort of voice acted. When you talk to certain NPCs. with the pop-up dialogue. But again, it's a minor thing, not a really big deal there. The story overall was pretty good in terms of, but I did find it could be a little bit slow, and I could sort of forget what I was meant to do because there'd be so much combat or exploring in between. Really the story starts off with, you're in an apocalyptic world, and apparently there was a apocalypse that happened in 1998, which we seem to miss. But this is based off sort of the first game there, and you have this Mad Max sort of area where it's a free for all Wild Wild West, and it's taken over by a lot of bandits and ex-cons, and you're on the good side, of course, the raiders who help people, an army of good people. And one of your comrades got killed, and you start off to investigate his death and what happened there, and things to unravel there. So there'd be sort of gaps where the war, where it's sort of kind of not keeping momentum with the game, but I think that's overall the pacing of the game is slower. It's a slower game. It's not, again, picking up an action game, right? So it was pretty good overall. So overall, my synopsis of this, I give this about an 8.5 out of 10. Really good game, really well put together. I think if this is the type of genre that you like, there shouldn't be any reason that you would not like this game. If this is not the type of game you like that type of genre, then you might have some issues with it. But I still think if you have someone like me who can be convinced into really appreciating the game for what it was, not even liking that genre, it speaks to it. But it's not easy entry. Like, you have to still spend a bit of time understanding, the controls and how the mechanics and the battle works. But that feeling of winning my first battle was pretty awesome, right? So I think this game is really worth checking out, and I think it's a breath of fresh air. It brings some of those old school values, in an independent game where, like an old game. That's why I like a lot of retro games. It has that feel, that sense of unforgiving challenge in the game, and I think it possesses that uniqueness, which I think is great. So I recommend this. I think it's a great game. If you like sort of turn-based RPGs, I think you'll eat this one up. And if you also like Mad Max style games, you'll really love this game. So, anyways, that's it for me. Signing out.